within the context of a married relationship, what is allowable? That's always this question, like, is it, if it's consensual, if it's whatever, is it just all okay?
Yeah. Married sex is meant to be about a deep connection.
Right.
So it's less about what are we doing and how are we truly connecting.
Wow.
I've worked with couples who come in and say, we just don't connect during sex. And I'm like, well, what's happening before that?
Right.
Well, we've started using porn to try to become more aroused because we're not connecting. I'm like, well, how's that working? They're like, well, it's not. That's why we're here.
Right.
The things that the world says are going to arouse you, which they will.
Right.
But if we're looking for something more than just arousal,
right.
If you're looking for something that truly is passionate and I think truly erotic, then you've got to look at the big picture of what are we creating together. Because one of the things that kills a sex life is...
Well, welcome everybody to the table, and we are excited to have you with us. And today we are joined by none other than the registered sex therapist. If you don't know, she's not registered for anything that I know of.
I'm not registered.
But she is licensed.
She is licensed.
You can Google and see if I'm registered, but I'm not.
What county is that?
I promise I'm not registered.
Yeah. And so anyways, for some of you who don't know what that is, I had a little bit of a faux pas moment a couple of weeks ago, and just talking about Nancy. So Nancy is one of our favorite people, alongside her husband, Ron, who's off camera. He's here watching with a stern eye on what's going to happen. But no, really, seriously, Nancy, I think you know this. We love you, and we just appreciate you. And I try to introduce you. Obviously, Nancy is. I just want to walk through this. Tell me, you've been in. I don't even know how to describe this. Like marriage therapy, pastoral ministry. Coaching groups,
sex therapy,
for how many years? Like, what was that journey look like? Help us get a sense of who you are.
Yeah, like 25 years.
Wow.
And so I been an LPC, a licensed professional counselor, for about 25 years.
That's what I meant to say.
Yeah, there you go. Licensed.
Not a licensed registered, but
that's right. And then what happened was I did some inpatient groups at a psych hospital.
Okay.
And then a lot of those people who were there would come see me in the outpatient office.
Yeah.
And so many of them had sexual trauma.
Yeah.
Right.
And so I remember at the end of one day, I'd had 8 clients, and I think 7 of them had sexual trauma.
Wow.
And so I'm like, oh my gosh, what is happening? And so I felt like that if I was going to do this kind of work, I needed to receive more training.
Sure.
Mm-hmm.
So that's when I got certified, not registered, certified as a sex therapist.
I think that means something.
I know, right? It's close, and it really doesn't matter.
Right.
And
it matters. Yeah, it matters.
It matters a lot.
It matters. Okay. Language does matter.
Very important.
Right.
Yes.
People are going click right now. Like, oh, we don't know about her.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you did that.
So that's what I did.
Okay.
I was also like an adjunct professor, and I would write courses for therapists on how to talk about sex with clients.
Wow.
And how they could begin the journey of really helping people. Because what would happen to me is I'd have a client come into the office, and I'd just ask them, like, how's the sexual part of your life?
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And what's your story? And they'd say, well, I've been to 5 other therapists, but I've never talked about any sexual trauma or anything that had happened. Mm-hmm. And so just training other therapists, like, hey, we have to, people are body creatures.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And our sexuality is a part of that. And if they don't have a safe place, they won't talk about it.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And so I just wanted to help others provide safe places.
That's awesome.
Mm-hmm.
For people to tell their stories.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So, and then, I was in private practice for quite some time, and then I was invited to join the staff of a big church in the marriage department.
Okay.
And so then I was over crisis marriages.
Wow. Okay.
So we had a ministry where people could come in on Sunday mornings and get help if they were in crisis.
Right.
And so I just assessed like what's walking through our door.
Right.
And there was a lot of affairs. So we started an affair recovery program. There was a lot of just personal trauma. And, personal trauma really shows up in your marriage.
Right.
For sure.
And you get two people who have some trauma in their background, and it can cause a lot of pain and chaos in the marriage.
Yeah.
So started groups to deal with the 5 types of abuse, and then wrote a marriage course called Marriage Revolution, because I think, all of us need a revolution, and our marriages do as well.
For sure.
So that was some of the work I did. And then I was on staff for 5 years, and then I left there and I went back into private practice, but I also joined the Townsend Group.
Right.
And that's where I moved more into the coaching world,
Right.
Executive coaching and relationship coaching.
Right.
And was with them for 5 years. I have about a 5 year.
5-year cycle.
About 5 years. And then I'm
The
ready.
only thing that she's been with longer than 5 years is Ron.
I know,
so
it is.
That's,
It is. It's true.
You made
Yay.
it, friend.
He's at the big
Yay.
5-0 with me.
Yeah.
So-
5-0.
Yeah, but typically
Yeah,
for
that's-
work, it's about 5 years.
Yeah.
And
So
then I'm
can I
ready to do
ask
something
you a
new.
question?
Yeah.
What has been your favorite
Wow.
season?
Great question. Well, for me, I'd say all of them. There's been highs and lows to all of it.
Sure.
And there's been ups and downs to all of it. But I think for me to just be able to keep progressing and going to new places
Yeah.
and trying new things
Uh-huh.
is part of the fun for me.
Sure.
Yeah.
I'm an Enneagram 7, so if I've done the same thing for like 3 to 5 years, I'm probably ready to start like, what's
Time for
next?
Yeah.
Yeah.
What's next?
I love
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
Well, and this is what's interesting is for me is, all of that experience, we certainly wanted to talk about marriage stuff. But for us, for those of you out there, a lot of times within Zion City, when you hear me talk about, the counseling that we've done on some level, or the therapist or a friend of mine, this is the person I'm talking about. And so Nancy has been incredibly helpful, obviously very skilled, gifted, licensed, all of that.
Certified.
But at the same time, but has been very practically helpful for us.
Yes.
Even just in improving, our marriage relationships and things like that. So I think any chance I can get to, we can kind of get to bring you to, other people and individuals. And now you're doing a podcast.
Yes.
So-
we've been making a few changes
Yeah.
to how we're doing that.
Okay.
Lately, we've been doing more mock casting,
Okay.
which was a term I'd never heard of.
Right, yeah.
But
They just make stuff up now.
I know,
It
we
doesn't
make-
matter. Like, it's, we're just on for the
we
ride.
do.
That's
I
it.
love it.
I get it.
And so we're just putting out like shorter, but hopefully more impactful
Yeah, love that.
reels. And that's our goal. My goal is to help people live a better life.
Sure.
And so I'm just trying to fine tune how to do that.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah.
I love that. I love that you're embracing, and that's one of the things I think we love about you is that fact that you're constantly growing,
Yeah.
embracing. You're a person who's always talking about the last thing you're studying, the
Yeah.
newest thing you're researching, looking into. And so I think that's awesome. I think
Thank
that is more people should be like that, just to continue to grow their brains, their
I
understanding.
think that
things of that nature.
the thing that I love most about you, Nancy, is you're bringing people along in your journey of growth.
Yeah.
It's not just here I am and I've arrived and let me show you how to get here.
Yeah.
It is I'm walking through this.
Yes.
Come walk through it with me.
Yeah.
And that's been, I think, something that just makes people feel so safe and wanting to grow themselves is because it's just you invite people along
Well,
with you
thank
in the
you.
journey.
Thank you. I hope I do, because really I believe it's not so much where did I start and where am I headed. It's more who are the people I'm doing this with.
Right.
Yeah.
Sure.
And so doing
Yeah.
it with each other.
Yeah.
And I realize like the older I get, the less I know.
Yeah.
And I love the idea that humility is pressing into our ignorance.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, I've got plenty of ignorance.
Wow.
And I can't see my own blind spots without you.
Right.
You know, and you guys,
Right.
you reflect things back to me, and I'm like, ooh,
Yeah.
ooh, I might need to investigate that
Yeah.
little blind spot of
Yeah.
mine, you
Yeah.
know?
Awesome. I love that. So we want to talk about marriage stuff because
Ooh, let's do.
we're in this whole series of marriage, and we've been talking about
Yeah.
marriage, and we're all married. Anyways, but so there are a number of questions that we get. One of the things we do as a church is, and I kind of took this from the late Tim Keller, I guess, but Tim Keller used to do a deal where he would preach a message in New York in his church, and then he would just go to another room adjacent to it and just like, anybody who has questions, meet me over there.
Oh, how cool.
And, to
Yeah.
do that in New York, in Manhattan, think about that.
I love that.
And the majority of his ministry was really, I believe, focused. I mean, was an incredible mind and
Yeah.
scholar and academic and lover of people and all of that. But, to think about he would literally just go to another room and say, okay, if you got questions, come ask me right after service. And it can be about anything. So, of course, in Manhattan, New York, you can imagine what you're getting. I mean, and so he dealt with tons of agnostics and atheists and people who are struggling and new believers. And so you can imagine what those sessions were like.
I can
I would imagine the questions, and he had such grace every time I heard him talk, very strong, but very grace-filled. But so we started this thing in our church where, okay, we can't pull off into a side room necessarily where we're at, but we started this idea of just having a follow-up conversation on Monday mornings that would be released for people to ask questions about the message and like, hey, what about this? And so it's interesting to me when we go in to talk about marriage. I mean, the questions just go off the
Start
chart.
flying
Like
in.
you could talk about
Yeah.
anything else, and you'll get a few people. And then you'll always get those people who ask questions that have nothing to do with anything. They're just like, where are the dinosaurs? And so it's always that case, like UFOs, dinosaurs, and eclipses,
Eclipse.
And so, which I'm like, okay, great. We have fun with it. But so the questions on marriage just absolutely come. And so it just shows me there's a huge need out there,
Such a big need.
for these nobody really
Yeah.
teaches us about marriage.
No.
Where do we
Nobody
learn?
does.
Parents, Hollywood, that sort of thing, whatever it
Yeah.
might be, or we just don't. We just
we
figure it
don't.
out as we go, and
Yeah.
that's often really struggling. So, I want to jump right into what is the most for me, and I think probably for Dave. This is the question that we get all the time, and I think I know some of your perspective, and I appreciate your perspective on this, but the question always comes up in terms of within the context of a married relationship, what is allowable? That's always this question, like, is it, if it's consensual, if it's whatever, is it just all okay?
Yeah.
And, obviously the Bible doesn't say a lot about that space, and the church has a lot to say about it, perhaps historically, but the Bible doesn't
Let us
really
give you the do's and don'ts.
and so like the Bible has not a lot to say about it. It says a lot about before. It says there's some things,
Yeah.
And so when you get that question, how do you respond to people who are asking those deviant people out there who are just wanting to know? Not really, just kidding. But how do you walk people through that process?
Well, I think married sex is meant to be about a deep connection.
Right.
So it's less about what are we doing and how are we truly connecting.
Wow. Yeah.
So I think there's some things, though, parameters to put around that.
Yeah.
Like I've worked with couples who come in and say, we just don't connect during sex. And I'm like, well, what's happening before that?
Right.
Well, we've started using porn to try to become more aroused because we're not connecting. I'm like, well, how's that working? They're like, well, it's not. That's why we're here.
Right. Right.
And I'm like, well, the thing is, I'm not the sex police, number one.
Right.
And the two of you have to, you two get to figure this out.
Sure.
Right. But you're saying you're not experiencing true intimacy.
Right.
And true connection. And, sex is meant to be about this deep knowing. Like we know each other. And so that says so much. Like there's safety, there's connection.
Right.
There's a mutual respect, a mutual love for each other. And, the thing, this is my concern about porn.
Right.
Is then we attach to things.
Right.
Yeah.
Sure.
And so you can attach to images.
Right.
Instead of the human
Yeah.
you are meant to be with.
Right.
And sex is meant to be this beautiful person to person, eye to eye experience.
Right.
That is it's mysterious.
Yeah.
It's meant to go beyond what we have words to describe.
Right.
And so when we bring, like I've worked with couples that bring in other people,
Right.
And it never works.
Right. Right.
It never works.
Right.
No matter how hell-bent they are on doing that.
Right.
2 years later, it's like they're divorced. I'm like, yeah,
Yeah.
that's where that leads you.
Right.
So the things that the world says are going to arouse you, which they will.
Right.
But if we're looking for something more than just arousal,
Right.
if you're looking for something that truly is passionate and I think truly erotic,
Right.
that then you've got to look at the big picture
Yeah.
of what are we creating together.
Right.
Right. So, how would you encourage people that are saying, "Okay, we want that connection"?
Yeah.
How do you now encourage them?
Yeah.
In that pursuit.
Wow. Yeah, there's always some mystery to that.
Right. Right.
And what that looks like for each couple.
Sure.
Right.
Okay.
For
Right.
Ron and I, like last night, I was telling Dana that we just sat out on the patio for like an hour and a half and just talked about life.
Yeah.
And then I think sexual intimacy just kind of is a natural response
Right.
to other types of intimacy.
Right.
Whether that's intellectual intimacy, spiritual, heart to heart.
Yeah.
Right.
I think we prayed about a few things.
Sure.
And then sexual intimacy just flows out of that. And so I'd encourage couples like, are you spending time together?
Yeah.
And I don't mean where like it's meetings about your finances together.
Right.
Like you do
Yeah.
need to schedule meetings.
Yes.
Like maybe Saturday morning we have a come to Jesus meeting about our finances, the
Sure.
kids, the work, all the things.
Yeah.
Right.
The business of life. You
Right.
do have to attend to that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I just mean like where you are intellectually connecting, where you are heart to heart connecting, where you are developing. Even if you go row a canoe together. It doesn't
Right.
matter. Go have some recreational intimacy. Go to an art museum. Have some beauty and music, and create these other areas of intimacy in your life. And
Right.
then sometimes sexual intimacy can flow from that. Now, I also totally believe that you have to prioritize sexual intimacy.
Right.
Because it won't just automatically happen. And, sadly, we've all been trained on movies and romances
Sure. Sure.
where you just look at each other and you want to rip each other's clothes off and have wild,
Right.
passionate sex.
Right.
And I'm like, best wishes. Best wishes.
Day one.
Yeah.
That's what that is.
That works for a while.
Right,
Maybe
right.
until your first big fight.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. True.
And then from there on out, you've got to keep sex on the front burner.
Right.
And no, we prioritize this.
Right.
And we make space, we save room, we save physical energy, we save space in our minds
Yeah.
for each other.
Yeah. That's awesome. So
And just prioritizing. I've worked with couples. I mean, I think of this one couple. I probably worked with them almost 25 years ago.
Wow.
I can tell you to this day, I'm like, you guys, they had a crummy sex life.
Right.
And they came in to go, we have a crummy sex life. We always have.
Right.
And we've been married for, I don't know, they'd probably been married 35 years at that point.
Wow.
Wow.
I'm like, that's hard. That's been bad for 35 years.
Yeah.
I'm so
Yeah.
sorry.
Yeah.
And I'm so glad you're here.
Yeah.
So we just started talking about sexual things, which I'd never done.
Yeah.
They were both kind of raised in very religious, rigid backgrounds where you don't talk about sex. Sex is dirty. So we
Right.
just had to normalize, unpack, have great conversations. And then I said, hey, you guys, for a while, I'd like you to schedule sex.
Right. Right.
So they have sex Tuesday nights and Saturday mornings. And to this day,
Right.
they still have sex.
Awesome.
Tuesday night, Saturday mornings. And the husband says, oh, nothing. Oh, nothing.
That's awesome.
Interferes.
He'll come knocking on Tuesdays.
With Tuesday night and Saturday morning. And I'm like,
awesome.
okay, I'll remember not to call you on it. He goes, wouldn't matter. The phones are off.
Right. Everything's off the hook.
Right. And I'm like, that, and they, they have the worst sex life, and now they teach classes on
That's
sex.
awesome.
They're like 70 something.
Wow. Wow.
And they're just a sweet little couple. And, they just like, the husband's like, oh, I adore you. I will always love you because you changed our married life.
Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, it's a big deal.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a
Such a
massive
big
part
deal.
of just our culture, but even within marriage. I mean,
Oh, my gosh.
when it's not right, I mean,
Yeah.
it's
when it's not right, it feels like everything's wrong.
everything else just
You know?
So how would you address when the couples are not on the same page?
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
she's I don't
She wants sex 5 times a day, and he wants it once a month.
Yes.
There
Like,
we go.
how
See, we
do
have
you-
to make this even.
Yes.
We've always
Yes.
thought men have the
Right.
higher sex
Yeah,
drive.
I appreciate
Right.
you doing that.
Yeah, there we
So,
go.
Yeah.
But 30% of the time, at least, the female has a higher sex drive.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, and it changes in seasons of life too.
Absolutely.
For sure.
It absolutely. I mean, if
For
you
sure.
got a bunch of small kids running around.
Yeah,
Yes.
she's
you know,
like,
she's exhausted.
really? I
Yeah.
have been sucked on and pulled on already.
Can you say that?
She can.
Nancy can say that, but
I mean, I don't mean that rudely, but you know what I mean.
yeah.
She's had a
I-
Now
child,
you know why she's like
a child climbing on her, and
I'm with you. No,
you know,
absolutely.
all the things all day.
Yes.
You know.
Yes.
So it could be
One of
hard.
the things I love about you, Nancy, and I aspire to this after just hanging with you just for a few years, is you normalize so much of these conversations.
Yeah.
In a way that is, it's not graphic. It's never done out of just gratuitous shock value.
Right.
No.
But you just normalize these
Yeah.
things to what
Yeah.
people are really living
Yeah.
and want to experience. They're experiencing it, and they're like,
Yeah.
I wish somebody could just say it so
Yes.
Yeah.
so I could not feel so much shame around it and
Yeah.
so much
Right.
embarrassment around it and
Right.
things of that nature. So
Right.
Yeah.
So the getting on the same page. That's,
Okay.
Well, and there are so many. I mean, a female hormonally changes every day.
wow.
Men are more consistent,
Right.
and then as men age, they have less testosterone. So they become sexually a little more like a female.
Right.
And then a lot of times, once a female is not worried about getting pregnant anymore or
Yeah.
her nest is emptied, her desire can sometimes skyrocket.
Right,
And
right.
he's like, hey, I finally have mellowed out.
I finally lowered this deal.
I know. I mean,
Yeah.
it's like, isn't it funny? I'm like, God, you're hilarious. Like,
Right.
it's almost like purposefully,
Yeah.
he never puts us on the exact same page.
Mm-hmm.
So we constantly have to be, like you mentioned yesterday in Ephesians, submitting one to another.
Right.
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 And like, I love and care about you.
Right.
And you love and care about me. Do I need to bring you along sexually, or do you need to
Right.
bring me along sexually?
Right. Right.
Who's going to be the inviter?
Yeah. So the
Right?
initiators. Yeah.
And,
That's good.
right? Like,
I
and
love that you use the word inviter instead of initiator.
Yeah.
Because I think sometimes that can feel,
like pressure?
yes.
Yeah.
I have to initiate. Oh,
Yes.
gosh, what does that mean?
Yeah.
But what if we were just to like invite? Like, I'd like to invite you to have sex with me.
Uh-huh.
And asking ourselves, am I being inviting? Or am I being a jerk and demanding?
Wow.
Uh-huh.
Because if you're being a jerk and demanding and entitled,
Yeah.
or, like when he gets older, if his erections aren't what they used to be, like, what's wrong with you? I mean, people can be mean.
Yeah. It's
Yeah.
amazing
They can be mean.
how
Yeah.
unkind people
Or,
can be.
when a woman has all these little kids and he's like, you're such a disappointment.
Wow.
Like, what happened to you? Well,
Yeah.
I've had 3 of your
Yeah.
children,
You were there. Yeah. Exactly. You were there.
and I was up all night
Yeah.
Right.
and I'm exhausted,
Yeah.
and you aren't that helpful with the kids,
Right.
Yeah.
Huge.
And so instead of like being demanding, if he were to say, hey, Ron used to do this for me. Hey, babe, we have 4 boys. I'll put the boys to bed.
Yeah.
You go like take a bath,
Yeah.
or whatever you want
Right.
to
Yeah.
do.
Just your
Right.
time. Yeah.
Right.
Go have some you time, and I'll wrestle with these boys and throw them all in bed.
Yeah.
And I'm like, it is a deal, and I'll meet you in about 45 minutes, right?
Right.
Because that could be
Ron
enough.
was the sexiest man alive.
He
at
is.
that moment. Like, he was.
He is. He really is. And he's so sweet. Like,
Right.
it's, women have busy minds.
Sure. Right.
Men, I can have male brain envy because men literally can have compartments.
Sure.
And I'm like, wouldn't that be lovely?
Wouldn't it?
Mine does not fit into one compartment. It takes it all up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Spaghetti brain.
And so
just-
So sometimes we get in bed and we're gonna like make love, and he's like, "Hey, are you here?" And he knows I'm not.
Right.
My brain
Right.
is afar off, and that's why it's been proven.
Yeah.
This is why females need 21 minutes of foreplay.
Gotcha.
It takes that long for
Y'all
her.
heard it here. 21
minutes. Write that down.
21 minutes to heaven. That's what we're
I
going to call
said
it.
that somewhere.
That's what we're calling it.
A wife texted her husband
Yeah.
after I'd said that, and he says, "Baby, I'm gonna give you 22.
I'm going to rock your world.
I'm gonna rock your world. I'm
22
setting the
and a half
alarm for
minutes.
22
Yeah.
minutes." And I'm like, "Oh, that's so cute, right? Right?" And sometimes she won't need that,
Yeah.
but to know that, because sometimes I think females, because our minds are so busy,
Yeah.
and if we compare ourselves to the quickness of a male,
Right.
we can feel like, what is wrong with me?
Right. Right.
I am slow. I am.
Right.
And now he's having to take all this time to get me warmed up, and he's probably bored, and let's just get it over with.
Yeah.
And I'm like, and then she doesn't enjoy it.
Yeah.
So it boomerangs. It doesn't work.
Right. Right.
Right.
Exactly.
And
right.
so if he can slow down and say, "Hey, honey, you have all the time you need,
Yeah.
and I want to invite you and bring you along." And if he'll be kind and patient that way,
Yeah.
then it will benefit him,
Totally.
right?
Yeah, absolutely.
So-
It
And the
strikes me.
marriage.
Yeah.
Because
Totally.
One, having bad experience after bad
Right.
experience
Oh,
Right.
man.
just kind
There's
of
no
sets
anticipation.
you up for
I know.
failure.
It really
future.
does.
Yeah.
And, we've got to have a sense of humor. Where
sure.
sometimes we go, "Well, baby, I hope that was good for you." But and don't worry, next time I'm going to get mine. I mean, you just have to
I'm just going to sit here quietly. Let you all talk.
you've got to, I'm like, for females, they've got to be sometimes, not always, but I think for both sexes, really, you have to have the freedom to go after what you desire,
Right. Right.
and not just passively hope it'll come to
Right.
you,
Yeah.
Right.
but to pursue,
Huge.
Right. Right.
pursue sexual desire, pursue sexual intimacy,
Yeah.
because I totally believe it is like the oil in the engine. Like sometimes Ron and I are annoyed with each other.
Right.
And, we've just learned being married 50 years. Like you just go, "Hey, let's put our annoyance over there
Yeah.
and let's go make love to each other." And then you can come back out
Right.
of our room and look at the annoyance on the shelf and go, "Yeah, I'm just
Yeah,
not annoyed
not that
anymore.
annoyed."
I can't remember what it was."
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's such a gift.
Right.
Yeah.
For sure.
It's such a gift
Yeah.
So good.
because sex releases all the God's pharmacy.
Yeah. No, that's true.
A natural God-given pharmacy, and it really releases all these bonding hormones and feel-good hormones. And honestly, if you're going to be married, you need the pharmacy.
Yeah.
Because
For sure.
marriage can
For
be
sure.
hard.
Yes.
Yeah.
It can be
Yes.
wonderful and
Yeah.
delightful, and it can be at times excruciating.
Yeah.
Right.
For sure.
Right. Yes.
It strikes me listening to this conversation how there has been such an oversimplification in the church world of and maybe because we just don't know
Yeah.
because we've never
Yeah.
studied or we've never and when we read a book and it's his needs her needs thing and we just
Yeah.
like there's
Yeah.
this massive oversimplification like
Total.
go do the dishes and then she'll be hot to try
Right.
and it's
Right.
like
No.
and while there could be some I think what it is like there's some of this truth in it but
Yes.
it's been distilled down to
Yes.
this one little thing you can do and then what people experience is like it didn't work that way for me more than
No.
once
No.
yeah and so then they feel disillusioned we go right back to old
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
I mean I just hear you say this is like a really complex simple but complex issue that must
Yeah.
be worked out in your marriage
So
through a
true.
lot of just constant conversation
Yeah.
outside of the bedroom probably talking about sex outside of sex so that there's this connection that's happening, understandings. Like, that didn't really do much for me,
Well, I love what you're saying. I had a professor, Dr. Doug Rosenau, who would say, avoid simplistic reductionism, especially around human sexuality.
Yeah.
We're complex.
For sure.
And you take two people who are different anyway.
Right. Exactly.
Right.
And a lot of our differences are sexual.
Right.
Although a lot of our similarities are sexual.
Right. Right.
And so just to allow it to be complex and like, this is really, honestly, a lot of it's just around building skills.
Yeah.
Totally. Instead of like, I don't think formulas work.
Right.
But I do believe we can all build skills.
Yeah.
Around, I like to call it relational bravery. And like, well, honey, what would it mean? What would making love to each other well look like for you?
Right. Right.
And so back to your question, when sexual desire there's a big differential between in the couple. Just talking about it, like what?
Right.
Some women think, oh, I want sex every day.
Right.
And you might find out if you're like, well, what would feel right for you? And he says, well, 3 times a week would be amazing.
Right.
And she's like, I think the thing for me and what's worked for us is for me just to be willing.
Right. Right.
Just a will. And I think we do that with each other.
Right.
Is there's just I'm willing to be your sexual partner.
Right.
And sometimes that might be fabulous. And sometimes we're like, yeah, I just don't think it's going to happen tonight.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's cool.
It's okay. Yeah.
Yeah. We're both fine.
Right.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's there and sometimes it's not. And not to awfulize or catastrophize, but normalize.
Yeah.
We're both exhausted.
Totally.
Right.
Exactly right.
Right.
Yeah.
But baby, tomorrow night I'm going to get you.
Yeah. But we will sleep tonight.
Right.
Yeah.
But tonight, you got to give a brother or somebody or even her a little hope.
Do you think that, you talk about this issue of like, she thinks he wants to have sex every day.
Yeah.
As a husband and he's like, maybe he does, maybe he doesn't.
Yeah.
Do you think that sometimes there's more the franticness on his part of not knowing when he's going to have sex that drives this constant, like, he's always trying to get there because he's never sure when and this conversation of just normalizing and going, hey, what's our rhythm? What do we want to work together towards?
Yeah.
And without any pressure.
That's so good because you're right. Some men will try to start beating the odds.
Right.
So if I try 10 times, I'm going to get it once.
They're going to Vegas. That's what they're doing. They're just straight up like, I'm going to play the odds here.
I'm going to keep putting my quarter.
She tells me no once out of her 3. If I ask 27 times, I'm having sex 9 times.
Exactly.
Okay. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. Instead of like having connecting conversation.
Right.
Like, honey, what do you need? What does your body need?
Right.
Because females hormonally change every day.
Right.
We aren't as straightforward as men.
Right.
And so if a man treats his woman like she's kind of a machine, he'll miss her.
Yeah, totally.
But if he stays open and if she will communicate, oh, that's wonderful. I think it's way more, if we can put it in more positive terms, like, oh, that's horrible. I hate that.
Right.
That doesn't work.
Yeah.
Right.
Men do not thrive under criticism.
Right.
Right.
So always turn your complaints into requests.
So
oh, baby, I love when you do that. Oh, remember when you did.
That is so good.
Right.
Turn your complaints into requests.
Yes.
That is worth everything you paid to watch today. Which is nothing.
I love that saying. I wish I would have come up with it. Terry Real did. I didn't. But turn your complaints into requests. So it's like, you never want to make love to me.
Right, right.
Turn that into, sweetheart, I love when we make time to make love to each other.
Right.
Would you have time to do that?
Right.
This week?
Right.
Or tomorrow? Or when would be a good time?
Right.
See, we all can open up to requests, but when we're like, you never, you always,
judge.
we just shut down.
Yeah, exactly right.
And don't you think that the requesting when it comes to sex can feel so not sexy, like what we've had shoved down our throats in movies.
Right.
And so I think if we can stop trying to recreate a fantasy world in our marriage, that would be super helpful if we just recognized that he's a real person who has gone to work all day and
so are you.
He's had whatever's happening, and so when we can come together and he shares what he's had going on and I share what I've had going on, then it does allow for
doesn't it?
I don't think pressure ever serves
well
in the sexual relationship of a husband and wife. Like, I don't think pressure ever is going to get you.
I don't either.
You know,
and that's why if you're waiting to have a great hot sex life,
right,
and waiting for maybe the passion you felt in the beginning, you're deceiving yourself and you're delusional.
Yeah.
This is just something you've got to prioritize.
Yeah,
right.
For sure.
And decide, we've decided this is an important part of our married lives.
I think it's so good.
And so we are mutually going to pursue this. Not just you, not just me, but together.
Right.
We'll prioritize this.
I was thinking about your conversation about having meetings, you know, household stuff.
Yeah.
You know, and one of the things that Dana does so well is like we have a scheduled Friday morning like conversation about budget, money, what's coming in, what's going out,
because
what are
I
we
love
doing?
a budget.
Yeah,
That
just makes me
and
so happy.
I don't so much, and so
me neither.
no, I appreciate them,
Yeah.
but I think what that has done in many regards is like it is compartmentalized.
Yeah.
It is fully talked through.
Yes.
It becomes a very intimate conversation, like connecting conversation, because we're getting our heads together around even dreams and going like,
so good.
hey, we're not going to do that. Remember, because we're going to do this. And remember, this is why. And when something gets tough and things get tight, we go, remember, this is why it's tight because we decided to do that. And it brings us back. But that also becomes kind of like, put a bow on it. It's done.
Yeah.
And it's not an issue for us through the rest of the week of her worrying about, you know, financial decisions or me worrying about financial decisions or where's it going to come from? What do we got to do?
Yeah.
Like we've already settled that.
Isn't that great?
And so out of that now, I think the same kind of context of if there's a relationship about sexual intimacy and how we doing and, you know, I think that could help us like just bring the whole pressure level down to where we can really be ourselves in those moments instead of trying to be like, you know, this is so pressure-filled. Just got to do it.
I love what you're saying because it's like, don't have conversations about sex in bed unless they're sweet ones.
Yeah,
Right.
exactly
Unless
right.
it's pillow talk.
Right,
Yeah.
exactly.
And then do that.
Totally.
But, you know, like if you kind of need to have a business meeting around sex, you know, get up, turn on the lights, or, you know, go to a coffee house and act like two civilized people
Yep.
that can talk about hard things,
Yeah, exactly.
you know?
Yeah.
No pun intended.
Right?
Oh my goodness. you were just
I've been waiting.
You were just leading us down a wonderful path.
It was so good, but
I'm sorry.
That's okay.
sorry about that.
I'm going to harass him as soon as I can.
Well, you can't. They brought up yesterday. One of the messages I said this. I'll tell him myself. So that when I was talking about Dana, I said she's a solid number 2.
I know.
Talking
We're like,
about
Waylon.
behind God, and then I never hit it till my wife's like,
Yeah.
you called me a solid number 2, and
You're
I was like,
thanks,
oh,
babe.
Yeah.
wow, okay. I didn't mean it that way, but
I know.
we all say those things.
I know,
so.
we do.
That's what you're
Solid
watching
is always
for.
better than loose, though. So I guess that's
Wow.
Okay, you two.
Okay.
Refocus.
We should.
yeah.
We were talking about sex. Now I'm embarrassed because you're talking about
No.
loose number 2.
Well,
Anyway, so
Well, you know.
Okay.
It
we can have hard conversations.
we can.
Yeah,
Right.
around sex and
And-
adult conversations.
And I think what would be wonderful is the question that you suggested about what would feel like a good rhythm for you, because I think, you know, growing up for me, you hear so many things about men think about sex every 13 seconds or whatever those like.
Right.
crazy statistics are, and maybe they're true, maybe they're not. I don't know, but until we can unwind what a statistic is and get it down to what is the man that I'm married to or the woman that I'm married to, what matters to them? Because I couldn't care less about those statistics.
Yeah.
Like, I want to be in relationship with him.
That's good, Dana.
And kind of debunk some of those things that we've just grown up hearing that may be completely
not
false
true.
when it comes to your spouse.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And so,
well, and what I don't like is the judgment. All men want is sex. That's a judgment, and it's unfair.
Yes.
It's unkind.
yes.
And it's untrue.
Yes.
Right.
You know, he has longings for a genuine, intimate relationship, just like a female does.
Right. Right.
And to treat men like they're just sex machines, or to treat them like he's the one who knows everything about sex. I'm just
Right.
And it's like, no, you're two adults trying to create something good and sweet together. And that's going to take both of you engaging without judgment.
Right.
Right.
Or if he's judging her like, oh, you're so cold and you're so frigid. And it's like, nobody thrives with judgment.
Right.
So, you know, we've
Right.
just got to
Totally.
drop the judgments and like, honey, what's right for you?
Right.
Right.
You know?
Let's
And
have
how
this
can we take,
conversation.
because one of the things that kills a sex life is performance. And, you know, sexual performance is in our faces.
Right. All the time.
Yes.
Like,
Yes.
all the time.
All the time.
From the Viagra commercials to how women are supposed to look a certain way to what our culture defines as sexy.
Right.
To, I mean, there's a million ways it's thrown in our face every day. And performance destroys intimacy.
Yeah.
This is not meant to be a performance.
Right.
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 It's meant to be, you know, the old English marriage vows included, with my body will I worship thee.
Wow.
And I'm like, I think we should put it back in. Like, what a sweet thing to say that I'm going to worship your body and you're going to worship mine. And together, because of this attitude, we'll create something really sweet together. You know, and there's no performance there.
Right.
It's just about this really something mysterious and beautiful.
Right.
You know, like I don't even have the language for it.
Sure.
Right.
You know?
Right. Right.
There's a question that came up about intimacy and sex, and it sort of had to do with the idea of, I don't see that you can have intimacy. I don't want to assume this is a man, but sounds like a man, but the idea was like, I don't think you can have intimacy. How do you have intimacy without sex? You know, and can you have intimacy without sex? And I think that some of that is drawn from, I've made some statements, and a lot of this is talking about single people, truthfully. Because I think in the church world, we've done a real disservice to people who are single.
Yeah.
In that we've made it, you know, you're less than, there's something wrong, you know, that kind of stuff. And actually, Paul holds it in a higher place. He's like, you do even better if you stay single.
Yeah.
That's right.
And so, but I made the statement, like, you can live without sex.
Sure.
You're not going to die without sex.
No.
Right.
No, you
But
won't
what
die.
you can't live without is intimacy.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, and the idea, even for a single person, like, well, okay, I can live without sex, but really I'm designed to connect with people relationally.
Yes.
You know,
Yes.
even if it's not sexually. So how do you help? I mean, I know we've talked about connectedness, we've talked through this, but because my example was like, well, what happens if there's an accident and you can't have sex? Or what happens if you get to an age and you know, there's not a desire or there's not the ability to have sex?
Yeah.
Do you just, everything falls apart in terms of you can no longer,
Yeah.
you know, and the question would be, do you actually become, maybe in our culture, more intimate in those moments because it's not a distraction of sexuality that,
Right.
you know, so how do you encourage, like, how do you see the play between intimacy and sex and lack of sex and, I mean, that sort of thing?
Yeah. Ooh, great question. You know, I was thinking about synchronicity.
Right.
Have you ever been like at coffee with somebody and, you know, there's nothing sexual.
Right. Right.
But you are on the same page.
Yeah.
and whether it's intellectual, spiritual, emotional, just friendship.
Right.
And you're like feeling like, oh, we're sharing an us brain right now.
Right.
We're sharing an us experience right now.
Yeah.
And that's intimacy.
Right.
Yeah. Yes.
And I think that's why I don't know, like it's always bugged me in the church where we talk about intimacy instead of just saying sex.
Right.
Like I'm like, hey, let's just say what we're trying to say.
We've made them the same thing.
We have.
Which is why people believe you
And they're
can't
not.
have it without.
Right.
Because people
Correct.
can have a lot
Absolutely.
of sex and
With
have
no
no
intimacy.
intimacy.
Absolutely.
Right.
Absolutely.
You know,
Right.
it's Eugene Peterson in the Message Bible in the introduction to the Song of Songs where he says, there's a lot of loveless sex
Right.
going on in the world. We need to reconnect that love and sex were meant to go together.
Right.
Right?
Right.
And I love that. He just says that. And, if you read through the Song of Songs, she's like, hey, north wind, could you blow? South wind, could you get going? She's really talking to her brain and her body. Like, south wind, like, could there be a warm wind, please?
Right. Right. Right.
And mind, could you quiet?
Right.
Like, just normalizing
Yeah.
all of this for females.
Right.
And he's like, they desire each other strongly. So they have permission to desire.
Right.
And I think sometimes in the Christian world, we've so shut down desire.
Right.
I get worried about some of the couples I've done like premarital counseling with. And I'm like, do you guys have strong sexual desire
Right.
for each other?
Right.
I want you to want each. I'm not saying
Right.
I want you to have sex.
Right. No.
Right.
I'm just, do you
There should
really,
be an
but do
attractive
you
desire.
want to
Yeah.
have sex?
Right.
Right.
Because if you don't, let's pause and
Right.
figure out where that God-given desire went to.
Sure.
Right.
Sure.
Because I think in the church we've done such a great job of sex is dirty, sex is bad,
Right. Right.
don't have it. Sex is, I used to always, say this, sex is dirty, save it for the one you love.
Exactly.
Right? And so it's like, and then I'll get some of these sweet young couples come into my office and they're like,
Yeah.
sex is still dirty.
Right.
And I'm
Right.
like,
Yeah.
hey, God wired us
Right.
as sexual
Yes.
creatures from the day you were born.
Right.
You are a sexual creature. And, I don't mean to gross you out, but your 99-year-old grandmother is still a sexual creature.
Right. Right.
It's who we are
Right.
in God's intention.
Yeah.
And it's meant, our sexuality is meant to draw us to a significant other,
Yeah.
and to do that. I mean, I'm like, I love that Ron and I have been married almost 50 years. I think because we have prioritized our sexual union, that I think we desire, and we didn't know this was possible 50 years ago because we were so hot for each other,
Right.
that we probably desire each other more,
Right.
but it's got a lot more depth and width and
Right.
meaning
Absolutely.
to it
I agree with that.
than
Right.
it did 50
Yeah.
years ago.
I
Right.
agree
We were
with
probably
that.
pretty shallow, like you're hot,
Right.
I'm hot.
No,
well,
absolutely.
Right.
You're
You know,
just
that was
going at
it.
it.
You know,
You're just
our
going at it.
depth at 18
Right.
years old.
Right.
Right.
Exactly right.
Right.
And now at 68, it's like, oh my gosh, because we've prioritized this, it has so much depth and meaning.
Yeah.
And it's so precious
Right.
and sacred.
Right.
And I
Yeah,
think
that we
that's
share.
what God
Yeah.
meant. Like the marriage bed is sacred.
Right. Right.
And that doesn't happen automatically.
Yeah.
You've got to be working towards that sacredness. And this is another one of my concerns about, and again, I'm not the sex police. It's not because I'm
Sure.
rigid or frigid. It's because, I get porn is highly arousing.
Right.
It's just my experience in 20 some years of working with a lot of humans who view a lot of porn,
Right. Right.
is that they stop making love to their
Yeah.
spouses.
Yeah.
It's that auto sex where sex becomes easier just with self and images.
Right. Totally.
There's nothing required.
Yeah. Nothing.
Right.
Where to make love to a woman,
Yeah, no communication.
Oh, a lot's
no
required.
Possible rejection.
Like when we were younger and Ron would just be amorous, just ready to roll. And I'd be like, dude, I don't have sex with a man who doesn't first talk to me.
Right.
This is going to require something,
Right.
darling,
Yeah.
of you.
Totally. That's awesome. Slow down, partner.
Right?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, so good.
But auto sex, having sex with yourself,
Right.
requires nothing.
Right.
And so we become relational morons.
So good.
We really do.
Yeah.
That's another thing that Nancy can say that we probably
Yeah.
I know
Relational morons.
Well, it sounds rude.
yeah.
And
No,
I
but it's true.
But it is
I don't
true.
mean to be rude.
Yeah.
But we are, the biggest, when I started really doing a lot of work with people who struggled with sexual addiction, research, science has proven that porn damages the courting center of your brain.
Right.
So think about that.
Right. Yeah. Your ability.
The part
even-
of a man's brain that is God made to pursue a woman and commit himself to and procreate with her.
Right.
Babies or no babies, you're creating a lot
Right.
Yeah.
together.
Right.
You're
Yeah.
meant to create together.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
And you're meant to literally like rule and reign
Right.
and take dominion
Yep.
over.
Totally.
And so if viewing porn cuts off and destroys that center of your brain,
Yeah.
Yeah.
that's so sad because then I think we stop pursuing a relationship with God. We stop pursuing relationships with others and we just become cold-hearted and cut off
Yeah.
and shut down.
Yeah. True.
And that's when we become relational morons.
Yeah.
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 Yeah. So good.
Yeah.
So good. It's been shocking to me at times when I've addressed even it's never from the pulpit because there's not a lot of pushback from too many pulpits.
Yeah.
But when it goes onto social media platforms,
Yeah.
the response of people, and I would say probably outside of Christianity, maybe outside of church at least, or
Yeah.
two statements about pornography. And I've been shocked. I would have assumed people would have thought, that are just living in the world like, oh, there's just nothing wrong with it.
Yeah. Yeah.
But what I was shocked about really was the response of what seemed like many men who were saying who were casting blame on their spouse,
Yeah.
if they're not even believers, their girlfriend, whatever.
Yeah.
Like going, well, if she would do these things,
Yeah.
then I would need this.
Yeah.
And I was just like
Yeah.
deeply, I was shocked. I don't know. I'm not shocked at a lot, but I was just
Yeah.
like, are you kidding me?
Yeah.
You talk about that moronic, approach. I'm like, how does that justify?
Yeah.
And now they're having a lot of conversations about Gen Z and lack of desire for sex. I mean, do you have any insights on what's happening there? I don't want to put you on the spot, but like,
No, but that's exactly what it, children now typically are exposed to porn at age 8.
right,
So you
Wow.
think about just growing up
Unreal.
on porn.
right, yeah,
It's our main sexual educator.
right.
And so by the time you enter into
And we're not talking pictures. We're talking probably hardcore, high def videos. I mean, and things of that nature.
my
now.
goodness.
At 8, maybe not every 8-year-old, but I mean, it's like this is not like 30 years ago where
you gotta-
there's a naked body.
You got to go to the store.
Right,
You got to
right.
figure out how to get a Playboy or
Right,
something like that.
right.
Yeah, and all that has changed.
Yeah.
And we're unaware. And again, I'm not shaking my finger at anybody
Right,
who's listening who views porn. I'm not doing that. I am saying, hey, I love and care about you.
Yeah,
And this is going to damage your brain.
right.
And it's going to kill your desire.
Yeah, yeah,
Like statistically, men who view a lot of porn don't make love their wives anymore.
right, right.
And same for women.
Because they attach to things, as you said. Yeah,
Right.
Yeah,
And so they lose their God-given human
right.
Yeah.
sexual desires, which God put inside of you and said, we're good.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And so I'm like, yes, there's all these young people now who have no desire. And I like to sit, I like to sit and observe people.
Mhm.
And I'm like watching people in the airport. And I'm like, gosh, we can kind of look like zombies.
Yeah,
And there's no like, oh, she's pretty.
right,
Oh, he's nice. Oh,
right,
it's like, no, we're glued to screens
right.
And we've become so dehumanized.
Yep.
And here's another thing I wanted to say about that, Waylon, is whenever we're looking to blame, when we're saying that the problem is outside of us,
Yeah.
like, well, if she'd be my porn star in the bedroom, I wouldn't need this.
Right.
I'm like, dear sir,
Yeah.
if this is ever going to get better,
Right.
you've got to look at you.
Right. So good.
If you're communicating to your wife, I want you to act out the sexual images I am looking out, she is going to start hating sex.
Right.
There's a reason why somebody hates sex. And it's typically because their partner is being a very bad sexual partner to them.
Right.
And so it's like, stop and look at you. Our problems come from within.
Yeah.
And we create most of our own problems.
That's so true.
Right. And so the problems aren't out here. It's because my wife's not sexy enough, or he's disgusting, or it's like, no, if you want to be an empowered person who lives an empowered life, go right here. Because you can do something about you all day long.
Yeah, for sure.
You can't do a darn thing about.
Right.
Right.
That's exactly true.
Right.
No, exactly.
I have no power to change my partner.
Right.
But I can change me.
Yes.
Yeah.
All day long.
So good.
Yes.
You know.
So
Yes.
good. That's so awesome. Anything else to throw out there?
I think we've got
We pretty much
plenty.
got her all in there. So, let's, I'll give you Nancy's email. No, actually, I love this. And I think, again, going back to just normalizing conversations, and I love your approach of just, I'm not here to judge it, which I think is a great approach to help bring people in to a conversation that really can be helpful instead of shame and going underground and that sort of thing. I think it's so important.
I have 4 sons, and we have conversations and even about social media.
Right.
And one of them said to me the other day, Mom, I don't even get on social media.
Right.
Cause then, somebody in yoga pants comes on, and then I'm like, dude, I love that about you.
Yeah.
Thank you for knowing yourself well enough to know
Right.
what limits you have to put around you
Yeah.
and what boundaries you need,
So good.
and that's why I'm like, when we take personal responsibility
Yeah.
for what we're dwelling on,
Right.
we've all got to give ourselves something to think on.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And so what are we going to be thinking on?
Yeah.
And are we thinking on, how can my wife and I have this really sweet love sexual relationship together? If you're thinking on that, you're probably going to get something good.
Yeah, for sure.
Where if you're thinking about, how can I keep myself aroused, you're going to go down all kinds of rabbit trails
Totally.
Right.
Yeah.
that aren't going to lead you to where you really want to end
work.
up at.
Right.
Doesn't work.
Right.
Awesome. Well, I love it. Well, thanks for hooking up with us and connecting. Hooking up, that's the best way to
That's
say
a
that.
bad thing for this episode. Wow.
We've
The
been talking
sugar
about sex.
has kicked in.
Anyways, never know what we're going to say around here.
Never.
The thoughts and
We never
opinions
know
of the
what
table are not
you're
necessarily
going to
those.
say around
yeah,
here.
exactly. I do it.
I
so.
can relate to that.
Thank you for watching ever so,
Yeah.
however you did, purely and with a good report. And so, anyways, hey, we're glad that you're with us. If you enjoyed this time, check out Nancy's Ask Nancy Houston podcast.
Yes.
Yeah.
We'll put the link in and that sort of thing, so you can continue with the mock casting.
That's my social media.
Okay.
Ask Nancy Houston. The podcast is the In Between with Nancy Houston.
In Between with Nancy Houston. So I think it's great content, great material, and if you like what's happening here, just like it and share it, and if you think it can be helpful to you. And so appreciate you joining with us. And so